let's go to Monday Night Football. San Francisco at Minnesota. The Niners favored by 7 on the road, 6.5 at some spots. There is some injury concerns, which we'll talk about. The total sitting at 44, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, 5:15 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. Luck rankings. Minnesota's been middle of the pack this year, so no 11-1 and one scores.
I think it's gone the other way, right? Are there
Yeah, they've been bad. They won
0-3 in one score games. Let's see, one.
No, I got one last week. I was on the Vikings, so I know that they won by 6 against the Bears.
Well, every single game has been a one possession game, I would say. But they're not going 11-0 in one score games again this year. They can't get away with that again.
Yeah, so they're 14th in luck. The Niners are 27th. So interestingly enough, despite the being favorites on the road after not completely blowing, like not even coming close to covering as a big road favorite last week in Cleveland, they are unlucky. And I do think like this, like if you're going to bet, and I don't really do this, but if you're going to bet like a 6-7 point favorite or even more, I do think this is the kind of spot that you want to get them, when everyone's kind of, the world is falling down, all their stars are hurt. They just blew it against the, they just, looked like crap against the Browns. Brock Purdy had his first bad game. First time they don't score 30 in forever. Like this is the time to buy the Niners. So I do think the Niners will play well, regardless who's on the field. They're a well-coached team with a lot of talent, regardless. But who do you like? Any thoughts on the luck rankings?
No, but I agree. I think 49ers bounce back after chopping my last undefeated team prop.
Nice.
They're going to bounce back this week. I'm sure of it. But I would wait to see the injury report. Trent Williams is questionable. McCaffrey's questionable. Debo's questionable. So this is one of those games where I think I'd wait to see the injury report. But I think the Niners bounce back here.
Well, I mean, if you like the Niners, I don't really think you want to wait because all that's going to happen I don't think it's going to come down much low. Like I don't think it's going to get past the 6.
Well,
but I do
7,
think
right? It's at 7 right now?
That's 6.5 at some spots.
Oh,
but
it is at 6.
The thing is, I think if Williams came back in a game, and they said McCaffrey and Debo aren't really serious, so if one of the two of McCaffrey and Debo get ruled in, it might go back up again. So if you like the Niners, I think you might as well just go in now. They're also a decent.
I would say it's more of a lean than something I want to lock in on Thursday. After this, I gotta try to figure out what the hell prop I'm taking for Thursday Night Football. So
all the Saints offense unused. Just pick one.
Yeah, I mean,
book it.
Might as well, right?
Except Rashid Shaheed. Never fade Rashid Shaheed. But who? So you're still undecided about Thursday Night Football. You're still undecided about this spread here. But
well, I'm going to be.
This is a DFS show. So who are you locking in the captain spot?
I know what the answer is here. It's Brandon Ayuk. The entire offense is coming off a down performance against the Browns. Brock Purdy only threw for 125 yards, and Ayuk still managed to post a 4-catch, 76-yard receiving line. It just kind of shows how dominant he's been this year. He's seen a 25% or greater target rate in every game this year. And last week was the second time he's had a 30% or greater target rate. And he's playing alongside Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuel, George Kittle. So if CMC's ruled out this week, Ayuk's going to see even more targets. It just seems like it's Debo and Kittle sort of taking turns being the odd man out in the passing offense. But Ayuk has really just turned into one of the best receivers in the game right in front of our eyes. So I look for the entire offense to bounce back, including Ayuk. So I love using him in the captain slot here.
Yeah, Ayuk's been amazing. It's crazy that he hasn't even scored since week 1 when he just posted up Patrick Peterson on like a perfect coverage by Peterson and got a
Well, they've
touchdown.
Just been letting McCaffrey score all the touchdowns.
Yeah, I somehow hit a Christian McCaffrey touchdown prop in a game he got injured. That's how good my beats have been this year. Except for until Mac Jones. Obviously.
Whatever you're doing with that Gabe Davis ripped shirt, just keep it up.
Yeah. So for those that don't know,
that shirt belongs in the NFL Hall of Fame at this point.
I don't even think it's in my possession. I think it's in the the trash Hall of Fame. But yeah, for those that have no idea what we're talking about, it was a couple years ago that Chiefs Bills wild playoff game, the 13 seconds game. I had a shirt that said Shmoney on it, but it was like in the same font that the Supreme box logo shirts are. And when Davis got his fourth touchdown, because we were on the Bills in that game when he got his
we were both on the touchdown. Bills. Simon and Chad were on the Chiefs.
Yeah, So we got egg on our face, but at the time it was it looked like the Bills were gonna pull it off, and Davis had just scored again, and I just straight up just ripped it off but I think I threw it out. But yeah, ever since then I've been on a heater. So one way or another, it's doing work for me. But so I'm gonna go a little riskier in the captain spot, and you kind of mentioned it. It's kind of been there's one guy every week is probably gonna take a backseat. Last week it was George Kittle. This week I think George Kittle has a big game. So the matchup is perfect for George Kittle. You have a Vikings defense that blitzes 57% of the time under Brian Flores. Now, that is most in the league by a country mile. Who's blitzing over half the time? That is just, I don't remember the last time I've seen something like that. The next highest is the Patriots. They're at 43%. So this Vikings defense, their identity, send extra rushers. George Kittle leads the 49ers in catches and yards against the blitz this year. He's second among all tight ends with 3 yards per route against the blitz this year, minimum of 5 targets according to Sports Info Solutions. And last season, starting in the game, Brock Purdy took over in week 12, and including the postseason, Kittle also led the team in yards, touchdowns versus the blitz with Brock Purdy at the helm. So Purdy does like to look for Kittle against the blitz. Debo's also been good against the blitz, but he's kind of banged up. But Kittle's definitely been his guy. And so Kittle had another one-catch game last week. He had a one-catch game in week 4. In week 5, he goes for 3 touchdowns. The time before that he had a one-catch game, the last time and the only time last year was week 10. He had 1 catch for 21 yards against the Chargers. The week after, 4 catches, 84 yards, 2 touchdowns. So his last 2 one-catch games, the next week he's had multiple touchdowns. 5 in total in his last 2 games coming off 1 catch. So that seems to kind of be how Kyle Shanahan's doing it this year. He's somebody's always going to kind of be a decoy because they just have a wealth of talent. So it's understandable. But now, as you mentioned, you could just out of necessity have to re-involve Kittle if McCaffrey and Samuel do end up sitting. But even if not, probably Debo would probably be the decoy. That would make a lot of sense if he's banged up. So, I think it's a big spot for Kittle. And this Minnesota defense allowed 10 catches on 11 targets for 67 yards and a touchdown to Kelsey, 6 catches to Gerald Everett, 6 catches to Dallas Goedert, 2 touchdowns to Donald Parham. So they've been giving up some production to the tight end position. I mean, that's what happens when you vacate those middle of the field because you're sending all these extra blitzers all the time. Yeah. So it makes perfect sense. Everything lines up for a smash spot for Kittle. And I mean, I might have to rank him over TJ Hawkinson. It's a tough matchup for Hawkinson going against, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, the safeties, Gibson, it's a brutal matchup. So, I'll see how that goes. But yeah, I like Kittle more than Hawkinson definitely for DFS this week, especially coming off the bad game. Who you like for value?
Well, assuming they hold out Christian McCaffrey, I would like Jordan Mason here. It might be Elijah Mitchell who actually draws the start if McCaffrey's out, but Mason will probably see most of the passing down work and the 2 minute offense, which is obviously where the more valuable touches are for CMC. But he's also flashed enough upside as a runner. There's a chance he could overtake Mitchell as the early down back too. If that hasn't happened already, we don't know. But I think he clearly offers the highest upside of the two, and it's curious to see how the rostership would sort out between Mason and Mitchell if McCaffrey's out. But I'm gonna have to go with Mason here.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Mason ran ahead of Mitchell, and it had nothing to do with game script because the game was close last week. So
yeah,
I at this point I have them pretty much splitting carries, but if McCaffrey is ruled out, I'm definitely going to have Mason as the starter. I think I and this is something that people that follow the team closely, beat writers and such, they were kind of saying this even heading into the Cleveland game. Like this guy Mitchell, it's part of it is he just can't stay healthy. He can't, like, if you already have McCaffrey and a bunch of other guys hurt on offense, you don't want to have a starter that you're putting in a game plan that never makes it through a game. So
yeah,
it's been tough. Mitchell's he's looked great, but then again, who hasn't looked great behind this in this scheme? So
true. But there was a play. I think it was the Cowboy game. I'll have to double back and look. It was like a 3rd and 6. It obviously wasn't a running down, but they gave Mason a draw play and he converted the first down, and it was like a crucial situation. So the fact that they're trusting him in a spot like that, and he came through, like there's plays like that I've seen him make really high leverage plays where he's come through as a runner. So Mitchell's been out the past couple of games, but this is Kyle Shanahan. Anything can happen. So I think there's a chance we don't know. He could be the number 2 back right now on early downs, but yeah, he's looked really good in his limited time this year.
Yeah. So if you look at success rate, which is, just first downs, you're getting, half for 4 or more yards. Second down, you're getting half the yardage. Third down, fourth down, you're converting. That equals a success. Small sample, obviously, but pretty comparable number of carries for Mason and Mitchell this year. Mason has 21 carries and a 50% success rate. Mitchell has 18 carries and a 25% success rate. So literally doubling him up, running behind the same line in the same scheme, same amount of carries. Now, granted, I think earlier in the year there was some times where Mason was really getting like that mop up duty, but Mitchell's been out most of the year, so Mason has still been kind of getting in there as a regular back number 2 running back who's giving McCaffrey a breather. He's not just going against like third stringers or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Defense is still playing hard because they're down usually. And then last week again, Mitchell was active. Mitchell was active last week, so that's really the reason I think we have to take Mason seriously too. Is that Mitchell was active last week. Granted, he wasn't an injury report, but he's another guy who's not really a special teamer. So if he's active to play running back. So the fact that he didn't really get in the game, despite McCaffrey getting hurt, is, I would say, very concerning for his stock. So yeah, like Mason as well. I would say this. Even if McCaffrey plays, I like Mason. Now that
there you go.
Because I think he's going to play over Mitchell. The more, I mean, listen, sometimes these things flip, and maybe Mitchell is still banged up, but they have Ty Davis Price on the roster. So if it was an injury related, they could have just had Price active. So I think Mason has indeed jumped Mitchell. I like Jordan Addison for value here. Not a ton of yards in his first true game as the wide receiver 1, absent Justin Jefferson, but still 6 or more catches, 52 or more yards, and or a touchdown in 5 of his 6 games this year. And most of those games have been with Jefferson in the lineup. He ran a route on every single drop back last week, so his routes run rate was previously hovering in the 70s, and then it jumped up to 80% in the last couple of weeks. Last week, 100%. Didn't come off the field on any passing plays. And as I mentioned, brutal matchup for TJ Hawkinson. San Francisco's number 2 in DVOA against Tight ends, Warner, Greenlaw, very good in coverage. Gibson and Hufanga can, wreak havoc as well. And then you have a situation where pretty much, and he's not been bad. He's actually been good. But Diamador Lenore is probably the guy you're going to target when you're throwing against this San Francisco secondary, because Ward on the other side has been great. I mentioned all the guys in the middle. Just you don't really want to get too crazy in there. So really, Lenore is the guy, and we see that kind of play out in the DVOA splits for left, middle, right. Lenore tends to play that right cornerback, which is the offense's left, most frequently, and San Francisco's 13th in DVOA on passes to the offensive left, which is Lenore's side, and that's where Addison tends to see a lot of his targets as well. So, obviously the receivers are going to move around, but I do think they're going to try to get, Addison matched up on Lenore as much as possible, especially with, Hockenson potentially being less of an option than in most weeks where Cousins could just pepper him with, 15 targets, which he'll drop 5 and still come up with like 10 catches. So Addison, and then on the other side, let's go Brock Purdy. This guy is not a system quarterback. He just had a bad game against the best defense in the league. When all those guys got hurt and there was bad weather. Like, simple as that. Always love to bet on a bounce back spot. I'm expecting multiple touchdowns from Kittle, so love the Purdy stack here. But I mean, you could even captain Purdy. Especially McCaffrey's out. Maybe they give Purdy like a sneak or a tush push or something near the goal line. So like Purdy, but like he's definitely not a system quarterback. Been watching him very close. Throws with anticipation. Great feel in the pocket of how to escape pressure, step up, make throws. Doesn't really ever panic. Very accurate. Much better deep ball thrower than Jimmy G, even though I don't think there's not a massive difference in arm strength, but just a very, very good quarterback is Brock Purdy. So going back to him to bounce back here. Minnesota, again, the most blitz happy team in the league. Well, Purdy is 3rd in passing yards against the blitz, 535, 4th in touchdowns against the blitz with 5. No interceptions, so 5 touchdowns, no picks against the blitz this year. For his career, 9 touchdowns, 1 pick against the blitz. And Brian Flores is going to do it. I mean, they do it over half the time. So like they're not just going to all of a sudden just sit back and let the young quarterback just pick them apart, which he will. Debo in or out doesn't matter. He's still got Ayuk, he's still got Kittle. So like me some Brock Purdy this week, and I think it's just a great time to buy low on the guys who had bad games last week, Purdy, Kittle in particular.
Yeah, no, I think he's a great play in the captain spot, especially if McCaffrey's out. I think, that's just going to increase his touchdown odds even more. He has 2 rushing scores this year. Again, he does have rushing upside. He just doesn't tap into it. But if they get around the 5-yard line or goal line, more than capable of running it in for a score. So I think he's a really sneaky captain play here.
Yeah, it's kind of just showing his growth and development, or his, I would say actually maturity is about better way to put it, because we just talked about how, it's Jalen Hurts went to a Super Bowl last year and Brock Purdy looks like the more polished quarterback. Like if you just watch, like Jalen Hurts still gets confused, still misses reads, still does kind of those things that you would expect a guy like maybe Purdy to do. But Purdy, I think the reason why he doesn't run more is because he knows what he's doing in the pocket. He knows where to go with the ball. He's decisive. He can anticipate, and he has a good feel for the rush and when to step up and when to kind of evade and keep his eyes downfield. So it's he
uses his mobility to kind of buy time and then throw it still, which is something that Jimmy G didn't really. He's not a mobile quarterback, so I think just Purdy's using that to just throw more. But yeah, he's looked really good. He's starting to get that swagger. He's not just Mr. Irrelevant now. He's like one of the best quarterbacks. And yeah, I agree. He's definitely not a system quarterback.
I mean, you keep winning games and you become like one of the top MVP favorites for the Super Bowl favorite. And you're gonna get some swag. Yeah. So I've noticed that too, though. Who do you like for dart throws?
I like Brandon Powell here. The wide receiver usage was pretty much what we expected without Justin Jefferson. Powell operated as the clear number 3 wideout, typically out of the slot. They used two tight end sets about the same rate, but less so on passing play. So we saw Johnny Munt and Josh Oliver both have season lows in routes run rate, which allowed Powell to have a routes run rate of 76%. We were talking about that. Like I thought it was going to be 60, 65, but he had potential, to be in the mid 70s, and that's what happened. Obviously, he wasn't going to see, the 30% target rate he's had on the season in a starting role, but 16% rate last week. That was about expected. It led to 4 targets, 3 catches for 20 yards. But that was a game where they led comfortably. This is a game, obviously it's a tough matchup, but they will, be forced to throw a lot more. So, Powell could sneak in with like a 5-catch game here. So I like him as a dart throw.
Yeah, he's the Vikings version of Deontay Hardy, I feel like, kind of same role. Except he's actually going to get he's a mix of, I would say he's a mix of Deontay Hardy's role and Tutu Atwell's role. Like he could do a little bit because I think he's got enough juice that you can do some things with him. Like they're gonna sneak him out downfield at some point. Watch, he's been doing most of his work closer to the line of scrimmage. But I feel like that you're going to start to sneak him downfield. And yeah, he's the clear number 3 receiver. We'll see. They just activated Jalen Naylor, so maybe he replaces N'Keal Harry. But yeah, Powell either way, I think will continue to see, over half the snaps at a minimum. I would have definitely shouted him out if you hadn't gotten an outline before me. But I had to dig a little deeper for a Vikings play, and I do like Josh Oliver this week too. And so when you're right, his usage against the Bears did go down. I think he only ran a couple of routes, but I've noticed that they go to more 2 tight end sets in against better defensive fronts where Oliver can be like a chip and release option into the flat. So if you look at matchups when he went against the Bucks, Eagles, Chargers, and Chiefs, he averaged just under 10 routes run per game, and even more passing snaps, because he was blocking and didn't even get out in the route on some plays too. But against 2 softer fronts, Carolina and Chicago, he averages 3 routes per game. So now you're going against San Francisco. I do think he'll be a bigger part of the game plan. San Francisco is one of the zone heaviest teams in the league yet again. And Oliver is 4th on the Vikings in yards per route versus zone, and really 3rd because Jefferson's not active. So among active Vikings, he's 3rd with just over 1.6 yards per route against zone. And after the starters on the Vikings, Addison, Madison, Osborne, Hawkinson, and Jefferson, Oliver is the next he's the most productive receiver against zone coverage. Really the only other one that's been productive at all. 9 targets, 7 catches, 60 yards. So all but one of his catches has come against zone coverage. So I do think they might try to sneak him out a couple times, chip and kind of sneak out, maybe chip Bosa and sneak out, because as I mentioned, I really think it's going to be tough for Hawkinson, who's already struggling, and I think he might get lit up a couple times in this game. So, but the second tight end, no one's going to cover Josh Oliver, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, give me some Oliver. I'm just hoping he catches a couple. He has multiple catches in half of his games this year, and he does have a touchdown. So, there's definitely a chance. And on the Niners
flyer at least.
Yeah, and on the Niners side, I feel like we got to go juice. We already talked about Mason, but there are some injuries. Niners really, if Debo's out, you could look at Ray McCloud or Ronnie Bell. So keep an eye on those guys if Debo's out, but can't assume that as we record this on Thursday. However, I do think it's an interesting time to get some juice check at fullback. And remember, he's a guy who, regardless of the injuries, regardless of what's going on, how the distributions are playing out, he's a guy who's going to be on the field 45, 50% of the time. That's just part of their offense. San Francisco and Miami, ton of 2-1 personnel. So always like him on a slate like this when you know it's kind of tough. You know, the team usually just kind of plays its starters and is not mixing a ton of guys in behind them. So Juszczyk is kind of that unsung guy, and he's another guy that's always a threat for a goal line carry. And McCaffrey scored in how many straight games? What is it, up to 16 straight? I think it is now.
Yeah, something like that.
So you know how Shanahan thinks. At some point, they're just gonna hand it to the up back, or maybe even a little. Remember that you ever play Madden and you do that fullback toss where it's like you kind of fake to the halfback and then it just pitches it way out wide to the fullback. He just walks in like Peyton Manning did that one time for a touchdown. Yeah, like that. I can see Shanahan drawing up something crazy like that, especially primetime game coming off a loss. You know, want to show out a little bit. So give me some Juszczyk for the Niners.
Yeah, I hit on my juice call against the Cowboys. He caught a touchdown. I thought he just missed another touchdown too. So he's usually good for at least 2 or 3, you know, showdown worthy games. So always like him in these slots, especially with McCaffrey and Debo banged up. One quick thing: if Debo is ruled out, no reason to think he's gonna be held out. But if he is, are we going with Ray McCloud? Your boy, Ray McCloud.
Under half a yard? If the books post half a yard prop, what do I do?
Well, if Debo's out and they offer a half yard prop, I think I'm taking the over this time.
Yeah, no, that's the right call. He ran a route. He's surprised. I thought Bell was going to get more and more involved, but looks like McCloud kind of overtook him.
Yeah,
ran a route on 81% of the dropbacks last week with Debo only 10%, and Bell didn't get much action at all in the pass game last week. So yeah, that's a little bit concerning. But yeah, at this point, it looks like McCloud would be that number 3 receiver. Obviously, Juwan Jennings becomes more playable as well, but hasn't really been a great option against the blitz. I think McCloud is probably a better option just because. You know, you can throw to him hot, right? Like he can just run a little slant. I think Jennings is a little more, you know, guy you're gonna throw contested balls and things like that too. So, I do like Ray McCloud definitely over Ronnie Bell, and they would probably I guess elevate Willie Snead or Chris Conley, one of those guys, somebody like that.
Lord.
They don't play them either. Definitely play Ray McCloud. And maybe, you know who I really want to see get some time, but it doesn't seem like he is, at least this year. Braden Willis, he's their number 4 tight end. But I think he has some interesting, like, remember Jalen Hurd, like that never was, and everyone was like hyped about him, but he just never panned. Like I feel like Braden Willis, you could kind of use him a little bit similarly. So I think Shanahan could find a way to utilize him, but I mean they just like, you know, Werner and Dwelly for their blocking and things like that. So
boring.
Super boring. But I mean, I think we pretty much mentioned every player, every backup. Oh, how do we? I mean, shit. If we're looking for a you know, who's gonna step up for the Vikings, gotta just 2 guys really. CJ Ham, obviously, on, you know, like, come on, big contract extension. You gotta
or something.
Wangu just got activated. You got to stack him with the defense though, which I don't. I mean, if everyone's out, maybe because he returned kicks, I believe, especially with Powell now playing more on offense. And but I'm curious as to your thoughts before we get out of here on Cam Akers, because I thought that Cam Akers usage was going to continue going up. It went up the first 2 games. Like, you know, first game he came in, got a few carries, few snaps. Second game seemed like every third drive he was getting in, you know, and I thought it was going to keep improving because he looks better than Madison out there. And this is coming from a person who had a lot of Madison shares because, you know, volume. But like, it's almost like I'm kind of mad that my prediction that like they actually do just for some reason believe in Madison seems to be coming true, because Akers was back to like a nothing again. Or is it just the Akers problem? Like, what's going on there?
Probably a combo of both. But, you know, I was watching that backfield closely. I had Madison under, what was it, like 12 and a half yards is his longest rush?
14 and a half, I think.
Don't tell yourself short. I still can't believe that number. Yeah. But yeah, like I was watching that game. I don't think Akers checked in until like the 3rd drive in the 2nd quarter. This is clearly Madison's backfield. They didn't give a shit that he was just pounding 2 yards every rush attempt. And then Akers came in, he ripped off an 8-yard run, and then we didn't see him again for like 2 more drives. I just think they're content using Madison as a grinder. That was maybe the type of game that they were just expecting or something. But you know, maybe Akers will start to eat into his receiving down work, if anything. We have to remember Akers,
what a twist.
I mean, Akers was a pretty decent pass catching back at Florida State. And, you know, Stafford just never targeted him. And, you know, Cousins has targeted him a quarter of the time he's on the field running a route. So I've found his, like, receiving props to be sneaky. But, again, like, they just really just throttled down his usage. So it was interesting to see. I don't get it. But, yeah, you called it. I mean, they're just sticking with Madison. It doesn't really matter who's behind him. So that's more of a coaching decision, I guess. But Akers, when he was on the field, looked fine to me, and Madison didn't. But
Madison hasn't looked good all year. Like that's
I know. So I can't
issue.
Explain the usage. It wouldn't shock me if it flips at some point, but until that happens, we're just assuming, right?
Yeah. So I get what happened. I'm starting to understand what happened with the Rams. So Sean McVay was kind of always known for, and remember, O'Connell is a disciple. You know, they've worked together. Sean McVay had kind of always been known for his, you know, zone running game. You know, and like those kind of concepts. You know, zone concepts. Well, this year he decided, you know, he took like a long look. He decided he wanted to run more power, more gap, and Kyron Williams is just better at that, and Akers not really good at that. So that's why. You know, he just like that's why you've seen him struggle with his vision and things and like be healthy scratch because McVay just was not feeling, you know, especially the transition. So they go and they ship him to O'Connell, who's running the scheme, the run scheme anyway, a lot of the same concepts that McVay used to use a lot more that he's kind of going away from. So you would think that there wouldn't be a learning curve because I know O'Connell's offense is somewhat complex, which is another reason why a lot of, you know, they're not using a lot of backups at any position on offense. But I don't get it. I mean, every time Cam Akers, we think it's like, okay, he's good. Then it just goes downhill again. But does this mean he's going to take over for Madison in like week 12 and to be the fantasy RB1 for the last 6 weeks or something? Sure. Okay. Yeah. So we'll wait. We're waiting on Cam Akers. Because I was concerned about that. You know, the usage with him last week. I was prepared to invest, and then kind of went back down. So all right, that is going to do it for us here on the night shift episode of the Fantasy Flex. Be sure to check out the full list of luck rankings at actionnetwork.com. And for more fantasy content from Sean and I, we got our player projections episode out right now over on the Action Network podcast channel. Our fantasy preview episode is right here on the Fantasy Flex podcast channel. actionnetwork.com for all of our NFL fantasy and betting content, fantasylabs.com for our DFS tools and models. Don't forget to check that Discord link in the episode description. Sean is on X at the _oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on a free award-winning Action Network app. So next time, let's get this money.